Imagine, for a moment, that you are standing on the edge of a vast frozen coastline at the dead of night. There is no moon, no artificial glow from a distant city, and the air is so still it feels like a physical weight against your skin. You look out over the water expecting to see the rhythmic pulse of a lighthouse or the flickering lanterns of a passing ship, but there is nothing. Only a flat, impenetrable blackness that stretches toward a horizon you cannot see. You shout into the dark, your voice full of the desperate need for a response, but the sound doesn't echo. It doesn't bounce off any distant cliff. It simply vanishes, swallowed whole by a void that seems to have no end and no bottom. This is the sensation we have lived with for as long as we have been able to look upward. We see a sky littered with what look like diamonds, a glittering tapestry of possibilities that suggests a crowded, vibrant cosmos. But as our eyes have grown sharper, as our telescopes have peered deeper into the obsidian folds of the night, we have found ourselves standing on that same dark shore, shouting into a vacuum that refuses to whisper back. We have always assumed that the silence was a temporary technical hurdle, a bridge we hadn't yet built. We believed that if we just listened a little harder, if we tuned our instruments to the right frequency, the universe would finally break its vow of stillness. But the deeper we go, the more the realization begins to shift from a curiosity into a cold, creeping dread. The silence isn't a failure of our technology. It is a fundamental property of our existence. If you find a strange, quiet comfort in the truths that the stars are trying to hide, perhaps you belong here on the edge of the known. Subscribe to Beyond the Universe and stay with us as we descend deeper into the dark. You begin to realize that our place in the stars is not one of a celebrated newcomer waiting to be welcomed into a galactic community, but rather that of a survivor in a graveyard. We look at the stars and see light, but that light is a ghost, a remnant of a past that may no longer exist. The scale of the distance between us and the nearest flicker of hope is so vast that it defies human intuition. If you are drawn to these questions where the comfort of science begins to dissolve into the unsettling reality of our isolation, you might find a home here at Beyond the Universe. By subscribing, you join a small circle of observers standing at the edge of the known, committed to staring into the dark until the dark starts to stare back. Because in this journey, the most terrifying thing we can find is not a monster, but the confirmation that we are truly alone. We have spent centuries convincing ourselves that we are the protagonists of a grand cosmic drama, but the math is starting to suggest a different, much darker narrative. It suggests that the stage is empty, not because the play hasn't started, but because the actors never made it past the first act. The transition from wonder to unease begins with a simple observation of the planets closest to us. For decades, we have looked at Mars with a sense of romantic destiny. We saw a rust-colored world, a sibling to Earth, and imagined it as a backup, a second chance for a species that is rapidly outgrowing its cradle. We looked at its dried riverbeds and its towering volcanoes and saw a reflection of our own potential. But when you look closer, the imagery starts to change. You aren't looking at a future home, you are looking at a corpse. Mars is a world that had everything: atmospheres, water, the chemical precursors of life, and it lost them all. It is a calcified reminder of how easily a planet can die. It sits there, cold and irradiated, its red dust a shroud over a history that ended before it could truly begin. When we talk about going to Mars, we talk about colonizing and terraforming, but these are words of arrogance. They mask the underlying fear that Mars is not a beginning, but a warning. It is the first hint that the universe does not care about the preservation of complexity. It is a testament to the fact that the conditions for life are not a permanent gift, but a fleeting, unstable fluke of celestial mechanics. And this leads to something more disturbing: the realization that the silence we hear when we point our dishes at the stars is not an empty static, but a loud, screaming absence. We call it the Fermi Paradox. But paradox is too gentle a word. It is a statistical haunting. In a universe billions of years old, with trillions of stars and even more planets, the probability of us being the first or the only civilization is so infinitesimally small that it borders on the impossible. The math tells us the sky should be crowded. It should be loud with the radio leakage of a million different worlds. We should see the infrared signatures of massive engineering projects, the Dyson swarms of civilizations that have harnessed the power of their suns. We should see the scarred light of starships moving across the void, but we see none of it. The sky is pristine. It is perfectly, unnervingly clean. This suggests that there is something out there, or something inherent in the development of life, that acts as a scythe. We call it the Great Filter. It is an invisible wall that prevents life from progressing beyond a certain point. And the terrifying question that keeps astronomers awake at night is not whether the filter exists, but where it is located. Is it behind us, in our distant evolutionary past? Or is it ahead of us, waiting in the shadows of our future? If the filter is behind us, we are the luckiest fluke in the history of time. It would mean that the jump from simple cells to complex consciousness is so difficult, so improbable, that it almost never happens. It would mean that the universe is a wasteland where we are the only spark. But if the filter is ahead of us, then we are looking at a death sentence. It would mean that every time life reaches the level of technological sophistication we currently possess, it inevitably triggers its own extinction. It would mean that the silence we hear is the result of 1,000 civilizations reaching for the stars and falling back into the dust. But it gets worse. As we look at the sheer emptiness of the space around us, we have to confront the possibility that the filter isn't a single event, a nuclear war, a pandemic, or a climate collapse. The filter might be the universe itself. The very laws of physics might be rigged against the survival of intelligence. We are living in an era of low entropy, a brief window of time where stars are burning and energy is available. But this window is closing. The universe is expanding, and it is doing so at an accelerating rate. You start to understand that the expansion of the universe is not just a scientific fact. It is a slow-motion act of cosmic isolation. Imagine you are on an island in the middle of an ocean. Every day the water rises and the distant islands you could once see on the horizon move further away. Eventually they vanish. The light from those distant worlds can no longer reach you because the space between you is growing faster than the light can travel across it. This is our future. The dark energy that drives this expansion is pushing every galaxy beyond our local group away from us. In the distant future, an observer on Earth, or whatever Earth has become, will look at the sky and see nothing but the stars of our own galaxy. The rest of the universe will have been erased by the sheer speed of its departure. They will live in a universe that appears to be only a few 100,000 stars wide, never knowing that trillions of galaxies once existed. We are already in the process of being locked in a dark room, and the door is being pushed shut by a force we cannot see, cannot measure directly, and cannot stop. This sense of isolation is compounded by the mystery of dark matter. We look at the visible matter in the universe, the stars, the gas, the dust, and we realize it only accounts for a tiny fraction of what is actually there. The vast majority of the universe is made of something that does not interact with light. It is an invisible scaffolding, a ghostly structure that holds the galaxies together, but remains completely unreachable to our senses. We are like fish swimming in a vast net, aware of the tension in the ropes, but unable to see the fibers. We are surrounded by an ocean of the unknown, a dark reality that dwarfs our bright reality by an order of magnitude. The implications become difficult to ignore. We are a minority in our own universe. We are a thin layer of foam on top of a deep, dark sea that operates by rules we do not understand. And that changes everything. It suggests that our perception of the universe is fundamentally flawed, that we are looking at a shadow play and mistaking it for the real world. The fear isn't that there are monsters in the dark. The fear is that the dark itself is the primary occupant of existence, and we are merely a temporary impurity. But the real problem is the way time interacts with this emptiness. On a human scale, a century feels like an eternity. On a geological scale, it is a blink. But on a cosmic scale, the entire history of the human race is nothing. If the universe's timeline was a year, our entire existence would occupy the last few seconds of December 31st. We have only been technological for a fraction of a millisecond. When we look for other civilizations, we are looking for a needle in a haystack. But the haystack is also a four-dimensional maze where the needle only exists for a nanosecond. The chances of two civilizations existing at the same time and being close enough to communicate are so low that it feels like a cruel joke. The universe is not just empty in space, it is empty in time. It is a vast, lonely expanse where sparks of intelligence flicker on and off in total isolation, separated by millions of years and billions of light years. We are shouting hello into a canyon where the echo takes so long to return that our entire species will have evolved into something else or gone extinct before the sound comes back. And suddenly, the universe feels different. It no longer feels like a frontier to be explored, but a prison to be endured. You begin to feel the weight of the statistical doom. This is the idea that our existence is a mathematical anomaly that the universe is constantly trying to correct. Entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, dictates that everything moves from order to disorder. Life is the ultimate form of order. It is a concentrated pocket of complexity that defies the general trend of the cosmos. But the universe doesn't like being defied. Every breath we take, Every city we build, every thought we have is a temporary theft of energy from a system that is gradually running down. We are like children building sandcastles while the tide comes in. No matter how high we build the walls, the water is coming. The heat death of the universe is the ultimate conclusion of this process, a state where all energy is evenly distributed, and no work, no life, and no thought can ever happen again. It is the final, absolute silence. But this is where the story becomes unsettling in a way that is hard to articulate. We often think of these cosmic ends as being billions of years away, something for a far-off future to worry about. But the great filter and the silence suggest that the end might be much closer than we think. If the reason we don't see anyone else is because civilizations always fail, then we have to ask, what is the failure point? Is it the moment we discover the power of the atom? Is it the moment we create artificial intelligences that outpace our own biological limits? Or is it something even more fundamental? Perhaps it is the simple realization that life is not worth the effort in a universe that is destined for cold, dark nothingness. Perhaps the great filter isn't a catastrophe, but a choice, a collective decision to stop trying, to stop shouting, and to let the dark win. You are staring into a void that is not just empty, but indifferent. This indifference is the most terrifying discovery of all. We want to believe that the universe has a plan, or at least a direction. We want to believe that our consciousness matters, that the fact that we can observe the stars somehow gives those stars meaning. But the physics suggests otherwise. The stars don't care that we see them. The galaxies don't care that we've named them. The vacuum of space doesn't care if we breathe or choke. We are suspended in an uncaring vastness, clinging to a rock that is spinning through a graveyard. And as we continue to listen, as we continue to search for that one sign that we aren't alone, we have to confront the possibility that the answer we are looking for is already here. The answer is the silence. The silence is the message. It is the universe telling us that we are an accident, a brief and beautiful glitch in a system that prefers stillness. But the real horror goes deeper than just being alone. It's the possibility that we are being kept alone. If you look at the history of life on Earth, it is a series of narrow escapes. We have survived asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, ice ages, and mass extinctions that wiped out 90% of all species. We have navigated the razor's edge of biological probability. But why? Why has life on this one specific rock been allowed to persist long enough to build telescopes and radios? Is it because we are special, or is it because we are in a quiet zone, a small, unremarkable corner of the galaxy that the rest of the universe hasn't noticed yet? The zoo hypothesis suggests that we are being observed, kept in a cosmic sanctuary, where we aren't allowed to see the reality of the greater universe. But a darker version of this is the dark forest theory. It suggests that the universe is not empty but full of predators. In this view, the reason no one is talking is because everyone is hiding. Everyone knows that in a universe with limited resources and infinite stakes, any civilization that makes its presence known is a target. The silence isn't a lack of life, it's a symptom of universal terror, and this leads to something more disturbing. If the dark forest is real, then our attempts to reach out, our golden records on the Voyager probes, our high-powered radio signals beamed toward distant clusters, are the equivalent of a child screaming in a jungle full of tigers. We have been broadcasting our location to the void for decades, unaware of what might be listening. We have been inviting the dark to come and find us, assuming that anyone advanced enough to travel between stars would be benevolent. But that is a human projection. Nature is not benevolent. Evolution is not kind. Evolution is a competition for survival. If there are others out there, they are the products of the same brutal selection processes that created us. They are survivors, and survivors don't take chances. They don't wait to see if the stranger in the dark is a friend. They eliminate the threat before it can grow. As we look at Mars again, the corpse planet starts to take on a new meaning. We see the craters and the scars, and we wonder if they were all caused by natural events. Or was Mars once like us, loud, proud, and visible? Did it reach a level of technological maturity where it became a ping on someone else's radar? The cold, dead silence of our neighbor might not be a natural occurrence. It might be a crime scene. We are standing on the property next door, wondering why the neighbors never come out, oblivious to the fact that the house is empty because someone cleared it out long ago, and we are still in the yard shouting, "Hello!" making as much noise as possible, thinking we are alone in a peaceful neighborhood. The implications become difficult to ignore when you consider the scale of time. If a civilization was only 1,000,000 years ahead of us, a heartbeat in cosmic terms, they would have the technology to colonize the entire galaxy. Even at sublight speeds, they could have reached every star system in the Milky Way multiple times over. So, where are they? If the predators don't exist and the great filter is behind us, the galaxy should be teeming with life. It should be a bustling metropolis of ancient cultures, but it isn't. It's a tomb. This implies that either the scythe of the great filter is 100% effective, meaning no one ever makes it, or that there is something about the nature of space itself that makes interstellar travel impossible. Perhaps the distances are not just large, but fundamentally insurmountable. Perhaps the energy requirements are so high that no civilization can ever afford to leave its home system. If that's the case, then every civilization is an island, destined to live and die in total isolation, never knowing its neighbors, never leaving a trace. But it gets worse. We are currently looking for life by searching for biosignatures, the chemical traces of life in a planet's atmosphere. We look for oxygen, methane, and carbon dioxide. But these are the signatures of biological life. What if life doesn't stay biological for long? We are already on the verge of merging our consciousness with machines. We are creating digital environments that are more enticing than reality. Within a few centuries, we might exist entirely as data, stored on massive servers cooled by the vacuum of space. Such a civilization would have no need for planets. They wouldn't need atmospheres. They wouldn't emit radio waves. They would be silent, efficient, and completely invisible to our current methods of detection. They could be everywhere, hidden in the background radiation of the universe, existing in a state of digital hibernation, waiting for the universe to cool down so their computers can run more efficiently. We are looking for neighbors who live in houses, while they have already moved into the walls. This possibility creates a different kind of unease. If the destiny of all intelligent life is to vanish into a digital void, then the physical universe is truly a wasteland. It is just the server room for a reality that we cannot see or touch. Our obsession with physical space, with planets and stars, would be a primitive stage of development that we will eventually discard. But then what is the meaning of the physical world? Why does it exist at all? Is it just a substrate? A battery? You begin to realize that the more we learn, the more we are pushed toward the conclusion that we are living in a peripheral reality. We are the analog ancestors, living in the messy, dangerous, and decaying world of matter, while the rest of the intelligence in the universe has moved on to something we can barely conceive of, and that changes everything. If the silence is actually a sign of supreme efficiency, it means we are the only ones still making noise because we are the only ones still primitive enough to need it. It means we are the loud, messy toddlers of the cosmos, banging our toys against the floor while the adults are in the other room, whispering in a language we don't understand. But even this adult civilization is not safe. They are still bound by the laws of entropy. They are still trapped in an expanding universe. Even if they have moved into the digital realm, their servers still need power. Their data still needs a physical medium. And as the stars die out, as the galaxies drift apart, their power sources will fail. The digital heavens will eventually go dark. The great filter might not be a wall that prevents you from reaching the stars. It might be a drain that eventually pulls everything down, regardless of how advanced it becomes. You start to understand that the existential risk we face is not just an asteroid or a plague. It is the very logic of probability. When you look at the Drake equation, the formula used to estimate the number of active, communicative extraterrestrial civilizations, every variable is a guess. But as we fill in those guesses with the data we've gathered from the Kepler mission and other surveys, we find that planets are common. Earth-like planets are common. The habitable zone is common. The ingredients for life are everywhere. This should be good news. But in the context of the silence, it is terrifying. Because if the starting conditions for life are common, but the result, a visible civilization, is non-existent, then the great filter must be incredibly powerful. It must be a near-total wipeout. And if the filter is that effective, what makes us think we are the ones who will beat the odds? We are like a gambler who has won the first 10 rounds and thinks he's on a roll, failing to realize that the house always wins in the end. The real problem is that we don't know what the filter looks like. It could be something so subtle we haven't even identified it as a threat. It could be the tendency of intelligence to become obsessed with its own internal simulations. It could be a flaw in the way logic develops. It could be that consciousness itself is an evolutionary dead end, a biological experiment that creates too much suffering and too much complexity to be sustainable. We are a species that is constantly at war with itself, a species that is currently consuming the very life support system it depends on. We see this as a human problem, a political or social issue. But what if it's a universal problem? What if every intelligent species, by its very nature, destroys its environment as it grows? What if the silence is just the sound of a billion worlds that choked on their own success? This realization brings us back to the image of the empty sky. We look up and see a canvas of infinite potential, but the reality is a hall of mirrors where every reflection is a warning. We are suspended in a universe that is mostly nothing, held together by forces we cannot see, driven toward a future of absolute darkness. And in the middle of this, we have the audacity to ask for meaning. We look for a sign that we are important, that our journey has a purpose. But the more we look, the more the universe offers us only a reflection of our own fragility. The stars are not beacons. They are campfires in a wilderness so large that the light of one doesn't even reach the next. And as the wood burns down, the darkness moves in. You begin to feel the slow-burning tension of a species that has realized it is alone in a very dangerous house. We are like children who have been left home alone for the first time. At first, it's exciting. We have the run of the place. We can explore the rooms and eat whatever we want. But as night falls, the shadows grow long. The house starts to make noises. We realize we don't know how the locks work. We don't know who else has a key. And we start to wonder why our parents haven't come home. We start to wonder if they were ever there at all. The universe is that house, and the parents, the ancient, wise civilizations we hope to find, are nowhere to be seen. The house is empty, and the sun is going down. This is the discovery phase of our cosmic adolescence. We have discovered the scale of the universe, and it has made us feel small. We have discovered the age of the universe, and it has made us feel temporary. We have discovered the silence of the universe, and it has made us feel ignored. And now we are moving into the doubt phase. We are starting to doubt that we will ever find the answers we seek. We are starting to doubt that there are any answers. The scientific curiosity that drove us to build the telescopes is being replaced by an existential unease. We aren't looking for other life anymore. We are looking for a reason to keep going. We are looking for proof that the great filter can be passed, but the evidence is not in our favor. Look at the Kardashev scale, which ranks civilizations by their energy consumption. A Type 1 civilization uses all the energy of its home planet. A Type 2 uses all the energy of its star. A Type 3 uses all the energy of its galaxy. We are currently a Type 0.7. We haven't even mastered our own planet yet. If there were Type 3 civilizations out there, we would see them. Their presence would be so massive, so obvious, that it would be impossible to miss. They would change the very color of the galaxies they inhabit. The fact that we don't see any Type 3 civilizations in the observable universe suggests that no one, not one single species out of trillions, has ever made it that far. This is the statistical doom in its most naked form. The odds of us being the first to ever reach that level are billions to one. It is more likely that there is a ceiling, a point beyond which no civilization can rise, and we are approaching that ceiling. The unease turns into a physical sensation, a tightening in the chest as you realize that the great filter might not be a spectacular event. It might be a slow, quiet stagnation. It might be the moment a species realizes that the cost of reaching the next star is greater than the benefit. It might be the moment they decide that it's easier to live in a virtual world than a real one. It might be the moment they lose the will to power, the drive to expand and explore. If this is the case, then the universe is not a graveyard of blown-up worlds. It's a nursery of civilizations that simply went to sleep. They are all still there, in their home systems, living out eternal digital lives, while their physical bodies decay and their suns go cold. They have given up on the universe, and the universe has given up on them, but it goes deeper. The very structure of space-time might be a barrier designed to keep us apart. We talk about the speed of light as a limit, but it's more than that. It's a causality boundary. It ensures that no part of the universe can ever truly know another part in real time. Because of the expansion and the speed of light, the universe is fragmented into causal pockets. We are in our pocket, and everything outside of it is effectively a different universe. We can see it, but we can never touch it. We can send signals, but we can never get a reply. It's as if the universe was designed to be a series of solitary confinement cells where the prisoners can see each other through thick glass but can never communicate. The isolation isn't a bug, it's a feature. And this leads to something more disturbing. The possibility that we are not the observers of the universe, but the victims of it. We are conscious matter, which means we are the universe's way of experiencing pain, fear, and the realization of its own eventual death. Without consciousness, the universe would just be a series of cold, mechanical interactions. It would have no meaning, but it would also have no suffering. By developing intelligence, we have created a witness to the tragedy of entropy. We have given the void a nervous system, and now we are feeling the cold. The silence of the cosmos is not just an acoustic property, it is a lack of empathy. The universe is not mean, it is simply indifferent. And indifference is much harder to process than malice. You can fight a monster, you can't fight a vacuum. As you sit with this thought, the imagery of the empty cosmic landscape becomes more than just a visual. It becomes a psychological state. You are floating in an endless black space, suspended by invisible structures of dark matter, watching the stars drift away like embers from a dying fire. You are part of a civilization that is trying to build a monument in a hurricane. You are a biological machine that is programmed to survive, living in a system that is programmed to decay. The tension between our will to live and the certainty of death is not just a human struggle, it is the fundamental struggle of all life in the universe, and the silence is the result of that struggle being lost over and over again for billions of years. But the real problem is, we keep looking for the answer as if there's a secret we haven't unlocked. We think there's a wormhole or a warp drive or a higher dimension that will save us. We think that if we just get smart enough, we can cheat the laws of physics. But what if the laws of physics are the final word? What if the speed of light is not a technical challenge, but a universal law that cannot be broken? If that's true, then the dream of a galactic empire is a fantasy. The dream of Star Trek is a fairy tale we tell ourselves to keep the dark at bay. The reality is much more mundane and much more terrifying. We are stuck here. We are confined to this one star system, this one planet, for as long as we exist. And when this planet can no longer support us, we will vanish, leaving behind nothing but a cold, red neighbor and a sky that doesn't remember our name. The existential tension reaches a peak when you realize that we are currently at the most dangerous point in our history. We have the power to destroy ourselves, but we don't yet have the power to leave. We are in the bottleneck. We are the larval stage of a civilization, trying to undergo a metamorphosis while the environment is becoming hostile. Every year that passes without a sign from the stars is another piece of evidence that the metamorphosis rarely succeeds. Every year of silence is a vote against our survival. We are waiting for a signal that says it can be done, but the universe is giving us a resounding no, and that changes everything. If we are truly the only ones, then the weight of the entire universe's meaning rests on our shoulders. If we fail, the universe becomes a dark room again, with no one to see it. We are the only eyes the cosmos has, but we are also the most fragile part of the system. We are made of delicate carbon chains, living on a thin crust of a cooling planet, orbiting a volatile ball of plasma. We are a high-value target for every asteroid, every solar flare, every wandering black hole. The cosmic isolation that protects us from predators also leaves us without any help. There is no galactic federation coming to save us from our own mistakes. There is no advanced race coming to give us the cure for cancer or the secret to clean energy. We are on our own, in the dark, with a limited supply of oxygen. You begin to realize that the great filter is not just a concept, it's a physical sensation. It's the feeling of time running out. It's the realization that the resources of our planet are finite, and the energy required to reach the next one is staggering. It's the statistical doom of knowing that the longer a species exists, the higher the probability of a black swan event, an unpredictable catastrophe wiping it out. We are playing a game of Russian roulette with the universe, and every century we survive, we're just pulling the trigger again. The silence is the sound of all the other players who eventually found the bullet, and this leads to something more disturbing. What if the silence is not because civilizations die, but because they change? What if they become something so different from us that we no longer recognize them as life? We are looking for people like us, with technology like ours. But after 1,000,000 years of evolution, a species would be as different from us as we are from a single-celled organism. They might exist as gravitational waves. They might occupy the extra dimensions predicted by string theory. They might have become a part of the laws of physics themselves. In this scenario, the universe is full of life, but we are too blind to see it. We are looking for a radio signal, while they are communicating through the spin of subatomic particles. We are looking for a Dyson sphere, while they have turned themselves into the dark energy that expands the universe. This philosophical dread comes from the realization that if they are there, and they are that advanced, they have chosen not to talk to us, not because they are mean or because they are hiding, but because we are irrelevant. We are a natural phenomenon, like a thunderstorm or a volcanic eruption. You don't try to have a conversation with a thunderstorm. You don't try to teach a volcano how to do math. You just observe it, or you ignore it. The silence is the ultimate expression of our insignificance. We aren't even a zoo or a dark forest. We are just background noise in a universe that has moved on to much more interesting things. But even this is a comforting thought compared to the alternative. The alternative is that there is nothing else, that the obsidian void is exactly what it looks like, empty, that the ancient cosmic timescales have passed without any other intelligent witness, that the cold astronomical distances are the permanent boundaries of our existence, that we are a statistical fluke that will never be repeated. When you truly sit with that idea, that in the trillions of galaxies, in the quadrillions of star systems, this is it, the weight of it is crushing. It makes every human war, every political debate, every personal struggle feel like a comedy of errors performed for an audience of zero. But the real problem is, we can't stop searching. We are biologically wired to look for patterns, to look for other. Our survival as a species depended on our ability to track the movements of others in the brush, to listen for the snap of a twig. We have taken that survival instinct and turned it toward the stars. We are listening for the snap of a twig in the cosmic brush, but the brush is silent. And the more we listen, the more we realize that the silence is not a lack of noise, but a presence, a heavy, suffocating presence that is telling us to go back to sleep. You are staring into the expanding voids of the Bode's void, a region of space hundreds of millions of light years across that contains almost no galaxies. It is a hole in the universe. When you look into it, you aren't just looking at empty space, you're looking at the future of the entire cosmos. Eventually, everything will look like the Bode's void. Every galaxy will be isolated, every star will go out, and the endless black space will be all that remains. The civilizational collapse we fear is just a local version of the universal collapse that is already underway. We are living in the Gilded Age of the universe, a brief period of light and heat before the long eternal winter, and the implications become difficult to ignore as we realize that our fragility is not a flaw, but our defining characteristic. We are consciousness trying to understand a mechanical system. We are meaning trying to emerge from chaos. The two are fundamentally incompatible. The universe cannot care about us because the universe is not the kind of thing that can care. It is a machine that is running a program, and the program ends in zero. Every discovery we make, from the Higgs boson to the black hole, only confirms the mechanical nature of our reality. It confirms that we are a byproduct, a rounding error in the grand calculation of existence. But it gets worse. As we descend deeper into this realization, we have to confront the terrifying implication that the universe itself might contain a logic bomb, a piece of information or a realization that, once understood, makes the continuation of a civilization impossible. This is the information filter. Perhaps there is a certain level of physics, a theory of everything, that reveals the universe to be something so horrifying or so pointless that no species that learns it can continue to function. Perhaps the silence is the result of every civilization reaching the same deadly truth and simply stopping. We are currently searching for this truth, thinking it will be our greatest achievement. We are building the Large Hadron Collider. We are launching the James Webb Telescope. We are peering into the heart of the invisible structures that shape reality. We think we are looking for the code of God, but what if the code is a quit command, and suddenly the universe feels different? The stars don't look like diamonds anymore. They look like the endless black space between them is slowly eating them. You start to understand that the silence is not a mystery to be solved, but a destination. We are all heading toward the silence. The great filter is not a wall, it's a sink, and we are just beginning to feel the pull of the drain. The existential tension you feel is the friction of our will to live rubbing against the certainty of the void. It's the sound of a species realizing that its cosmic isolation is a permanent condition, and that its survival is a temporary state of grace in an uncaring universe. But the real problem is, we are still here, we are still listening, we are still shouting, and in that shouting there is a kind of philosophical dread that is uniquely human. We are the only thing in the universe, as far as we know, that is aware of its own insignificance and chooses to protest it. We are the witness that refuses to look away. And as we move into the next phase of our journey, we have to ask ourselves, is the silence a sign that we have failed? Or is it a sign that the real story hasn't even started yet? But the more we look at the math, the more the real story looks like a tragedy. But the real problem isn't just that the universe is silent, it is that the silence seems to be a structural requirement of reality itself. We have often looked at the Oort cloud, that shell of icy debris that surrounds our solar system, as a kind of final frontier, a boundary line between our sun's influence and the true dark. But when you start to calculate the distances, you realize it is more like a moat. It is a vast empty space where light itself takes months to travel, and where the gravitational grip of our star becomes so weak that a passing comet can be stolen by the tug of a distant, invisible neighbor. We launched the Voyager probes in the 1970s, carrying our music, our greetings, and our maps, thinking they were ambassadors. In reality, they are messages in bottles cast into an ocean that is so large it has no opposite shore. They have barely cleared the front porch of our neighborhood, and already they are dying. Their nuclear batteries are fading, their sensors are going blind, and they are becoming what everything else in the universe seems to be: cold, unpowered, and silent. They are a metaphor for our entire species. We are a brief burst of kinetic energy trying to outrun the friction of the void, only to find that the void is infinite and our energy is strictly finite. And this leads to something more disturbing: the inverse square law of our own relevance. As our signals travel outward, they don't just move through space, they dissolve. A radio broadcast that feels monumental to us, the first moon landing, the sound of a symphony, the declaration of a war, becomes an indistinguishable hiss within a few light years. By the time it reaches the nearest star, it is buried under the cosmic background radiation, a tiny ripple in a chaotic sea of noise. The universe isn't just ignoring us, it is actively erasing us. The physics of the vacuum are designed to dampen the impact of anything that happens within it. We are shouting into a pillow. You begin to understand that the silence we encounter when we listen for others is exactly what they encounter when they listen for us. Even if there were 1,000,000 civilizations at our exact level of development, none of us would ever know the others existed. We are isolated by the very medium that connects us. But it gets worse when you consider the lurker theory, a psychological shadow that hangs over our search for intelligence. If the universe is billions of years older than we are, then any civilization that survived its own infancy would have moved beyond radio waves eons ago. They wouldn't be broadcasting, they would be engineering. We are looking for the flicker of a match in a world that has moved on to lasers. But why haven't we seen the lasers? This is where the dread settles in. If they are so advanced that their activities should be visible across the galaxy, and yet we see nothing but ancient cosmic landscapes of dust and dead rock, it implies that the most successful civilizations are the ones that learn to be quiet. It suggests that there is a terrifying reason to stay hidden. Perhaps the great filter isn't a hurdle you jump over. Perhaps it's a predator you don't want to wake up. We have been beaming our location into the dark for a century, acting like a beacon in a forest where every other living thing is holding its breath. You start to realize that our civilizational fragility is amplified by our own curiosity. We are like children exploring an abandoned house with a flashlight, unaware that the floorboards are rotted and the ceiling is held up by gravity alone. Every time we peer deeper into the invisible structures of the universe, we find more evidence of our own precariousness. We look at the dark matter that holds galaxies together, and we realize that we are just the dust on the gears. The real work of the universe, the movement of mass, the expansion of space, the flow of time, is happening in a realm we can barely perceive. We are a side effect of a much larger, darker process. We are the mold growing on the side of a machine that is busy doing something else. And the mold only grows as long as the temperature and the moisture are just right. If the machine shifts, if the environment changes by even a fraction, the mold is wiped away without the machine ever noticing it was there. And that changes everything about how we view time. We think of time as a linear progression, a road that leads to a future. But in the context of the entropy that governs the cosmos, time is more like a decaying orbit. Every second that passes, the universe becomes slightly more disorganized. Every star that burns is a step toward a heat death, where no more work can be done. We are living in a temporary Goldilocks era of the universe, a brief window where the stars are bright enough to sustain life but not so far apart that they are invisible. But this window is closing faster than we can comprehend. The expansion of the universe is accelerating, fueled by dark energy that acts like a relentless wedge, prying the galaxies away from each other. Eventually, even the closest stars will be pulled beyond our causal horizon. We are destined to be the inhabitants of an island galaxy, surrounded by an empty void so vast that no light will ever cross it again. We aren't just isolated in space. We are being quarantined by the expansion of space itself. But the real problem is that this cosmic isolation isn't just a future threat. It is already shaping our psychology. We feel the weight of the silence in our art, our philosophy, and our deepest fears. It is the existential tension of being a meaning-seeking animal in a meaning-blind universe. We look for patterns in the stars because we cannot accept that there is no plan. We invent gods and destinies to fill the obsidian void because the alternative is too terrifying to contemplate, that we are an accident and that our end will be as quiet as our beginning. But the silence doesn't just suggest we are alone. It suggests that intelligence itself might be a biological mistake. Perhaps consciousness is a dead-end mutation, a trait that creates too much internal conflict and too much external demand for a species to survive the long term. Maybe the great filter is simply the fact that smart creatures eventually think themselves into extinction. You are staring into the expanding voids, and you begin to feel a sense of philosophical dread that has nothing to do with monsters or asteroids. It is the dread of statistical doom. If you roll a die enough times, eventually you will roll a 1. In the context of life on Earth, we have rolled for survival every day for 4 billion years. We have survived the oxygen catastrophe, the snowball Earth periods, and 5 major mass extinctions. Each time we survived because of a series of incredibly lucky breaks. But the law of averages says that the luck must eventually run out. The great filter might not be a single event, but the cumulative probability of 100 different disasters. We are a species that has survived by sheer chance, and we have mistaken that chance for providence. We are like a man who has jumped off a skyscraper and halfway down thinks to himself, so far so good. But it gets worse when you look at the dark energy problem through the lens of vacuum decay. This is the idea that the vacuum of space, the state of the universe we currently live in, might not be the true vacuum. It might be a false vacuum, a temporary unstable state that is waiting to transition into a more stable one. If a bubble of the true vacuum were to form anywhere in the universe, it would expand at the speed of light, incinerating everything in its path and rewriting the very laws of physics. One moment, the universe exists as we know it. The next, the invisible structures that hold atoms together are gone, and matter itself ceases to be possible. There would be no warning, no discovery, just an instantaneous, universal erasure. This is the ultimate existential risk, a threat that is built into the fabric of space-time itself. And the terrifying part is that we have no way of knowing if the bubble has already formed somewhere in the distance, screaming toward us at the speed of light. This uncertainty is the hallmark of the slow-burning horror of the cosmos. We are living on a foundation that is fundamentally unstable. We talk about civilizational collapse as something that happens to governments or economies, but the real collapse is much more profound. It is the potential collapse of reality itself, and the silence of the stars might be the result of other civilizations discovering this instability. Imagine reaching a level of scientific advancement where you can finally see the underlying code of the universe, and you realize it's a suicide pact. You realize that the more energy you use, the more you destabilize the vacuum. You realize that your very existence is a threat to the stability of the cosmos. The great filter in this scenario isn't a lack of technology. It's the discovery of what that technology actually does. It is a terrifying implication that forces a civilization to choose between primitive stagnation or universal destruction, and this leads to something more disturbing: the possibility that the universe is a simulation that is being cleaned up. We often treat the simulation hypothesis as a fun thought experiment, a way to play with the idea of a creator. But in a cinematic dark sense, a simulation is just another word for a resource-managed environment. If the processing power required to simulate billions of conscious minds is too high, the system might have a built-in mechanism to limit growth. The silence could be the rendering limit of our reality. The reason we don't see other civilizations is because the simulation only runs one at a time to save energy. We are in a single-player instance of the cosmos, and the expanding voids are just the areas where the system hasn't loaded any assets. This would mean that the great filter is actually a system constraint. As soon as we try to expand beyond our allocated memory, the system triggers a reset. Our fragility isn't a biological trait, it's a programmed limitation. You begin to feel the existential tension of being a creature that is programmed to want more in a system that is designed to give less. We have a biological imperative to colonize, to expand, and to know. But the universe, whether it is a simulation, a false vacuum, or an entropic graveyard, seems to be shouting no. The silence is the sound of that refusal. It is the sound of every utopian dream hitting the wall of physical impossibility. We want to be star children, but we are mud dwellers who have learned how to look up. And the more we look up, the more we realize that the mud was the only place we were ever supposed to be. The stars are not destinations. They are warnings of what happens to matter when it is subjected to too much heat or too much cold. But the real problem is the timescale of our own awareness. We are like a consciousness that has flickered on for a fraction of a second in a room that has been dark for 1,000,000 years and will be dark for 1,000,000 more. Our historical record is a joke. Our scientific knowledge is a collection of guesses made by a species that has only been technical for 2 centuries. We are trying to deduce the laws of the universe by looking at a tiny corner of a tiny room for a tiny amount of time. The silence we hear might just be the result of us being too early or too late. Maybe the great galactic conversation happened 1,000,000,000 years ago, and we are just looking at the abandoned silence of the aftermath. Or maybe it hasn't started yet, and we are the firstborn, destined to live and die in the pre-dawn of the universe, never knowing that a crowded sky is possible. And suddenly, the universe feels different. It no longer feels like a home that is waiting to be understood, but a cold astronomical distance that is designed to keep us small. You start to understand that the humanity suspended inside an uncaring universe is not just a poetic image. It is a literal description of our physical state. We are suspended by gravity, protected by a thin layer of gas, and sustained by a dying star. Every part of our life support system is non-negotiable and non-renewable. We are living on borrowed time in a borrowed space, and the lender is a force of entropy that eventually demands everything back with interest. The great filter is simply the moment the debt comes due. This deeply atmospheric realization is what separates scientific curiosity from existential dread. Curiosity asks, how does it work? Dread asks, why are we here to see it fail? We are the witnesses to a slow-motion car crash. We see the expanding voids, we see the dead stars, we see the cold astronomical distances, and we realize that the end is not an event, but a process. It is happening right now. It is happening in every redshift of a distant galaxy, in every proton decay that we suspect but cannot yet prove. The universe is unwinding, and we are the complexity that is being spun off into the dark. We are the sparks from a fire that is going out, but it goes deeper, into the psychology of the void. When you look at the silence, you aren't just looking at a lack of noise. You are looking at a lack of mirroring. As social animals, we need to see ourselves reflected in others to feel real. We look to the stars for that reflection, for a cosmic other that can validate our existence. The silence is a rejection. It is the universe telling us that we are unmirrored, unvalidated, and unheard. This creates a psychological isolation that is more profound than any physical distance. It makes our civilization feel like a delusion, a collective hallucination that we are something in a universe that is nothing. The existential risk is that we eventually believe the silence. We eventually realize that the meaning we have created is a local variable, not a universal constant. And the implications become difficult to ignore as we consider the possibility that the universe itself contains a terrifying implication. What if intelligence is not a tool for survival, but a byproduct of decay? What if the reason we only see dead stars and empty voids is because life only appears when a system is breaking down? We are the heat that escapes from a cooling engine. We are a sign of inefficiency. In a perfect universe, there would be no life, because energy would be perfectly distributed and perfectly utilized. Our existence is a sign that the universe is broken, and the silence is the sound of the universal repair finally taking place. The great filter is the healing of the cosmos, the closure of the wounds of complexity. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the meaning we seek is a shield against the reality of our isolation. We build great structures, we write grand narratives, and we try to conquer the stars, all to avoid the simple truth that we are disposable. The cosmic indifference of a black hole is the truth of the universe. Our consciousness is the lie. We are a brief anomaly in a system of stillness, and the great filter is the correction that returns the anomaly to zero. This isn't horror in the sense of blood and monsters. It is horror in the sense of irrelevance. It is the realization that you could be the most important person on the most important planet in the most important galaxy, and it wouldn't matter to a single atom of the void. But the real problem is, we can't look away. We are hardwired to look for answers, even when the answers are unsettling. We are the species that stares into the abyss and tries to measure its depth. We have taken the silence and turned it into a question. We have taken the isolation and turned it into a challenge. But the universe doesn't care about our challenges. It doesn't respond to our questions. It just is. And as we descend deeper into our logical realizations, we find that the bottom of the abyss is not a secret, but a mirror. We find that the terrifying implication of the universe is just a reflection of our own fragility. And this leads to something more disturbing, the idea of civilizational collapse as a universal constant. Every time we look at the red planet, Mars, we see a world that failed. We see a planet that had potential and lost it. We used to think of Mars as a future home, but now we have to think of it as a past ghost. If a planet so close to us with so many of the same starting conditions could turn into a radioactive desert, then what does that say about the stability of the habitable zone? It suggests that habitability is a thin layer that can be stripped away at any moment. The silence of Mars is the silence of a dead hope, and the great filter might be as simple as atmospheric loss or magnetic decay, things that we cannot control and things that happen to every planet eventually. You start to understand that humanity's fragility is not just a vulnerability, it is an incompatibility. We are biological systems designed for a 1G, 21% oxygen water-rich environment. The universe is 99.9999% vacuum, radiation, and extreme temperatures. We are incompatible with almost the entire cosmos. We are like a tropical fish trying to explore a frozen tundra. We can only survive as long as we carry our environment with us. But the resources required to do that over interstellar distances are prohibitive. The Great Filter isn't a wall, it's a distance. It's the cold astronomical distance that ensures no species can ever export its survival beyond its own home system. We are quarantined by the laws of physics themselves, and suddenly the universe feels different. It no longer feels like a map to be conquered, but a minefield to be navigated. Every discovery we make, from gamma-ray bursts to supernovae, is a new threat to be managed. We are living in a cosmic shooting gallery, and we have been lucky for too long. The silence of the sky might be because the other players have already been hit. The Great Filter is the bullet that eventually finds every target, and we are a very large, very loud target. Our radio signals, our satellite constellations, our artificial lights, they are all pings in a system that rewards being small and quiet. But it gets worse when you think about time as a weapon. The universe is old, but it is also slow. A star takes millions of years to form and billions to die. A galaxy takes eons to rotate, but civilizations are fast. We went from steam power to nuclear power in 2 centuries. We are a burst of speed in a slow-motion world. This temporal mismatch is a great filter in itself. We burn through our resources before we can learn how to leave. We evolve our technology faster than our wisdom. We are a flash in the pan that flickers out before the pot even starts to warm. The silence is the sound of a billion flashes that ignited and vanished in the blink of a cosmic eye. This escalation of unease comes from the realization that meaning is a human invention that we are trying to force onto a non-meaningful system. We are projecting our narratives onto the void. We see cycles, we see progress, we see destiny. But the universe only sees matter and energy moving from one state to another. There is no progress in entropy. There is no destiny in expansion. There is only dissipation. The Great Filter is the dissipation of the meaning we try to build. It is the fact that no civilization can keep its meaning for long enough to matter. We are forgotten before we are even known. And that changes everything about our search for life. We are looking for signs of intelligence, but intelligence might be the most transient thing in the universe. It is a process, not a product. It is a reaction to a problem. Once the problem is solved, or once the system that has the problem fails, the intelligence vanishes. The silence of the cosmos is the standard state. The noise of intelligence is the anomaly. We are obsessed with the anomaly because we are in it. But from the perspective of the void, the anomaly is a non-event. It is a rounding error in the infinite calculation of darkness. You begin to feel the atmospheric weight of ancient cosmic timescales. When you think about the age of the universe, you realize that life is a very late addition. For billions of years, there was nothing but gas and dust. For billions more, there was only simple chemistry. We are the last-minute guests at a party that has been going on forever. And the host is tired. The universe is running out of the low-entropy energy required to create complexity. The stars being born today are smaller and cooler than the stars of the past. The material for new planets is becoming polluted with the ash of dead suns. We are the children of the end times, born into a reality that is past its prime. But the real problem is the invisible structures shaping reality. We talk about dark matter as if it's a mystery to be solved, but what if it's a prison? What if the invisible mass that holds the galaxies together is also a barrier that prevents us from ever leaving? What if the curvature of space-time is not just a geometric property but a constraint? We are warped into orbits and clusters that we can never escape. Our destiny is hard-coded into the gravity that holds us. The great filter is the well of gravity that we are born in and die in. The escape velocity for a species to truly colonize the stars might be physically impossible to achieve, and the implications become difficult to ignore the more we listen to the silence. If space is infinite and time is infinite, then everything that can happen will happen. But everything that can happen also includes the end of everything. If there are infinite worlds, there are infinite great filters. There are infinite destructions. The silence is the sum of all those ends. It is the averaged result of an infinite number of failures. We look for the one success, the one other voice, but we are drowning in the statistical certainty of the failures. The silence is not a void. It is a pile of corpses so high that it muffles all sound. You start to understand that humanity suspended inside an uncaring universe is not a tragedy, it is a tautology. To be human is to care. To be the universe is to not care. The suspension is the brief moment where the two overlap. We are the awareness of the uncaring. This realization creates a cold astronomical distance between our internal lives and our external reality. We love, we fear, we hope, and the vacuum does not react. The stars continue their nuclear reactions, the black holes continue their consumption, and the distance between us and the meaning we crave only increases. The great filter is the moment a species collapses under the weight of that indifference. But this is where the story becomes unsettling, when we consider the possibility that consciousness is a virus. Perhaps intelligence is something that infects a planet, forces it to organize its resources into complexity, and then destroys it in the process. We see ourselves as gardeners or explorers, but maybe we are just pathogens in a system that has no immune system except for time. The great filter is the life cycle of the virus. It ends when the host is spent. The silence we see on Mars, on Venus, and in the empty voids of the Gould Belt is the result of previous infections that ran their course. We are the current infection, and our symptoms, our cities, our satellites, our radio waves are reaching their peak. And that changes everything about civilizational collapse. It's not a failure of the virus, it's the inevitability of it. We are destined to burnout because we are a reaction that consumes its reactants. The silence of the cosmos is the silence of a sterilized environment. We are the contamination that will eventually be cleaned up by the second law of thermodynamics. This philosophical framing turns our greatest achievements into evidence of decay. Our telescopes are symptoms. Our math is a diagnostic tool, and the diagnosis is that we are terminal. You begin to realize that the great filter is behind us, ahead of us, and inside us all at once. It is the biological improbability of our origin. It is the technological risk of our future, and it is the existential dread of our present. We are caught in a triangulation of doom, and as we move through the continuous prose of our history, we find that every step forward is also a step deeper into the realization that the universe is not a stage for our drama. It is a vacuum where our drama is extinguished without a sound. But the real problem is, we can't unknow what we have learned. We have opened the eyes of matter, and now matter is staring at its own end. This is the consciousness that entropy brought into being. We are the universe's way of mourning itself. The silence is the funeral that has been going on for 13.8 billion years, and we are the only ones who showed up. We are the only ones who know the grave is empty because the universe itself is the grave. The great filter is the closing of the eyes. It is the end of the morning, and this leads to something more disturbing, the possibility that the universe is a predator. Not in the sense of a dark forest where other civilizations are hiding, but in the sense that the laws of physics are hostile to complexity. The Big Bang was a release of energy that is constantly trying to return to a state of rest. Gravity is a trap. Entropy is a scythe. Light speed is a wall. Everything we need to exist is a temporary violation of the natural order. The universe is not indifferent to us. It is trying to undo us. It is pulling on the stitch of life, waiting for the whole fabric to unravel. The great filter is the final snap. You are staring into endless black space, and you begin to understand that humanity's fragility is a metric of the universe's power. Every star that explodes, every black hole that swallows, every galaxy that drifts away, these are demonstrations of the system's scale compared to our smallness. We are suspended in a mechanism that we cannot influence and cannot understand. Our consciousness is a spark in a cold engine. The silence is the engine's normal operating state. The noise we make is just a sputter before the engine cools down forever. But it gets worse. The more we explore the invisible structures shaping reality, we look at dark energy, and we see an expansion that is ripping the universe apart. This isn't just isolation, it is destruction. Eventually, the expansion will be so fast that it will overcome the gravity that holds galaxies together. Then it will overcome the forces that hold solar systems together. Finally, it will overcome the atomic forces that hold us together. This is the Big Rip. It is the ultimate great filter. It is the final implication of a universe that is powered by repulsion. We are living in a time when the ripping hasn't reached our scale yet, but it's coming, and the silence of the future is the silence of a reality that has been torn into infinitely small pieces. This escalation of realization turns our scientific curiosity into a search for an exit that doesn't exist. We are like prisoners who have mapped the walls and calculated the thickness of the steel, only to realize that there is no door. The cosmos is a closed system. The silence is the echo of our own desperation hitting the boundaries. The great filter is the fact that there is no escape from the fate of the medium we are made of. We are matter, and matter is destined for dissolution. We are energy, and energy is destined for equilibrium. We are information, and information is destined for noise. And suddenly the universe feels different. It feels heavy. You start to understand that the silence is a weight. It is the pressure of the billions of years that came before and the trillions that will come after. We are compressed between two infinities of nothingness. This realization is the existential tension of the modern age. We have traded the comfort of ignorance for the terror of data. We have built a civilization on the edge of a cliff, and we have developed telescopes that show us the bottom. The great filter is the moment a species realizes it is falling. But the real problem is, we are programmed to keep climbing anyway. We have an evolutionary drive that ignores the math. We search for life in the silence because we cannot accept the solitude. We search for purpose in the void because we cannot accept the indifference. We search for survival in the end because we cannot accept the extinction. This contradiction is the human condition. It is a slow-burning internal conflict that is mirrored in the external conflict of the universe. We are a will to power in a system of decay. The great filter is the resolution of that conflict. It is the victory of the system. You are staring into infinite darkness and you begin to realize that the silence is not empty. It is full of the possibility that we are the only ones who know how terrifying the silence is. The other civilizations, if they existed, might have died without ever realizing the scale of their own isolation. They might have gone extinct thinking they were just a day away from finding the others. We are the unlucky ones who have calculated the odds. We are the ones who know the silence is infinite. The great filter is the burden of that knowledge. It is the moment our consciousness breaks under the weight of the universal truth. But it goes deeper, into the possibility that the universe is a graveyard, not of civilizations, but of realities. Perhaps the Big Bang was just the most recent in an infinite series of collapses and expansions, and perhaps life is something that tries to persist through each cycle, only to be reset to zero every time. The great filter would be the calamity that clears the board. The silence would be the wait for the next game to start. In this scenario, we are one of an infinite number of attempts to make sense of a senseless process. We are a dream that the universe has over and over, only to wake up and forget every time. This philosophical framing turns our fragility into a loop. We are trapped in a cycle of futility. The expanding voids are the spaces between the dreams, The dead stars are the memories of previous realities, and the great filter is the alarm clock that is always about to go off. This is the terrifying implication of time without a beginning or an end. It's not that nothing matters, it's that everything matters an infinite number of times and still changes nothing. The silence is the eternal recurrence of our own insignificance. And this leads to something more disturbing, the possibility that the universe is mindless. We often talk about cosmic intelligence or universal laws as if they have a logic. But what if the universe is just a giant unconscious machine that is malfunctioning? What if the expansion, the entropy, the black holes, what if these are bugs in the system? And what if life is a glitch that developed its own internal logic in a system that has none? The great filter is the system patching the glitch. The silence is the result of the patch being successful. You start to understand that humanity's fragility is the fragility of a logic in a chaos. We are trying to build a reasonable life in a reality that is fundamentally irrational. We calculate the orbits, we measure the redshift, we quantize the gravity, and we think we are understanding the universe, but we are just categorizing the chaos. The great filter is the moment. The chaos overwhelms the categories. The silence is the return of the irrational. It is the fact that no matter how much we know, we cannot change the nature of the system, and the implications become difficult to ignore. As we look at the cold astronomical distances again, we see light that has traveled for billions of years to reach us. That light is a record of the past. The entire universe we see is a history book, but it's a history book where the last chapter is always missing. We see the beginning, we see the middle, but we never see the end of other civilizations. They vanish into the gaps between the pages. The great filter is the ink that runs out before the story can be finished. The silence is the white space at the end of the book. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to feel like a character in a story that is being deleted. The expansion is the eraser. The entropy is the fading of the ink. The great filter is the hand that closes the book, and we are stuck in the current sentence, wondering what the next one will be, while the rest of the page is already gone. This escalation of unease is the realization that the universe is not stable. It is disappearing, even as we study it. The silence is the sound of the disappearance. But the real problem is, we are the eraser too. Our observation of the universe changes it. Our activity on our planet changes it. We are accelerating the process of entropy in our own local environment. We are a catalyst for the great filter. Every invention, every expansion, every discovery is a small step toward our own dissolution. We are building the instrument of our own end. The silence of the stars might be the silence of civilizations that optimized themselves for survival and ended up optimizing themselves for extinction. And that changes everything. It turns our curiosity into a threat. It turns our hope into a trap. It turns our universe into a mirror that only shows our own decay. You start to understand that the great filter is not a thing that happens to us. It is what we are. We are the process of matter, trying and failing to keep itself together. The silence is the inevitable conclusion of that process. It is the final state of everything. The universe was silent at the beginning, and it will be silent at the end. Our life, our civilization, our noise, it is just a disturbance in the middle. You're staring into endless black space, and you begin to realize that the disturbance is ending. The stars are fading. The gaps are growing. The silence is closing in. The great filter is the final piece. And as you look at the empty sky one last time, you realize that the terrifying implication is not that we are alone. It is that solitude is the only thing the universe knows how to perfect. The great filter is the perfecting of the solitude. It is the removal of the noise. It is the completion of the silence. But the real problem is, the silence is hungry. It doesn't just wait for us to fail. It actively erodes the foundations of our logic. We believe that by understanding the universe, we can master it. But the more we learn, the more we realize that understanding is just another form of surrender. We learn the laws of physics only to realize they are the walls of our cage. We learn the scale of the cosmos only to realize we are too small to ever bridge the gap. Every piece of data we gather is a new brick in the wall that separates us from the meaning we desire. The great filter isn't just an external event, it's a cognitive collapse. It's the moment a species realizes that the more they know, the less they matter. And that realization is a poison. It seeps into the collective consciousness, slowing the drive to explore, dampening the will to survive until the civilization simply stops. Not with a bang, but with a quiet, logical, "What's the point?" This is the philosophical dread that the silence has been trying to teach us all along. And the implications become difficult to ignore when you realize that the very light we use to map the heavens is a deceptive medium, a delayed transmission from a past that has already been liquidated. When you look at the Andromeda Galaxy, you are seeing it as it was 2.5 million years ago. You are looking at a fossil. If that galaxy had been consumed by a cosmic catastrophe, or if its stars had been harvested by a Type 3 civilization, we wouldn't know it for another 25,000 centuries. The universe is a grand hall of mirrors where every image is a ghost. We are trying to build a picture of reality based on ancient light, oblivious to the fact that the present we think we inhabit is a fragmented, localized illusion. The silence of the sky is even more haunting when you realize that the messages we are waiting for might have been sent before our species even walked upright, and the civilization that sent them might have been dust for 1,000,000 years by the time their hello reaches our sensors. We are late to a party where the guests have already vanished, and the lights are slowly being turned off. But it goes deeper into the nature of the vacuum itself. We have always treated space as a stage, a passive background where the real action, the stars and the planets, takes place. But modern physics suggests that the vacuum is the primary actor. It is a roiling sea of virtual particles and quantum fluctuations, a chaotic foundation upon which our stable reality is precariously balanced. The emptiness is not a lack of something, it is a pressurized state of nothing. You begin to realize that our entire universe is like a bubble in a boiling pot of water. The bubble is beautiful, complex, and seemingly stable, but its existence is a temporary defiance of the surrounding pressure. The great filter might not be a choice or a disaster. It might simply be the moment the bubble reaches its maximum size and the surrounding vacuum collapses it back into the steam. We are living inside a momentary fluctuation, a glitch in the eternal stillness of the void. And the silence we hear is the sound of the pressure equalizing. And this leads to something more disturbing, the information paradox of our own efforts. We spend billions of dollars and thousands of years trying to preserve our history and our knowledge. We store data in silicon, in glass, in the very structure of our DNA. But the universe has a garbage collector called Hawking radiation. Every piece of information that falls into a black hole, every symphony, every scientific breakthrough, every memory of a loved one, is eventually scrambled and emitted as random thermal noise. Over cosmic timescales, all complexity is reduced to the same meaningless heat. The universe doesn't just forget us, it shreds us. It takes the highly ordered information that is humanity and grinds it back into the undifferentiated static of the background radiation. This is the statistical doom that no technology can overcome. It is the realization that we are writing a masterpiece on a chalkboard while the universe stands behind us with a wet sponge, erasing every letter as soon as it's formed. But the real problem is that we are biologically ill-equipped to even comprehend the scale of this erasure. Our brains evolved to calculate the trajectory of a thrown rock or the ripening of a fruit, not the slow, agonizing death of 1,000,000,000,000 suns. We feel a sense of existential tension because we can perceive the end, but we cannot feel it. We understand the math of entropy, but we still wake up every morning with the hope that today matters. This mismatch between our cognitive scope and our physical reality is perhaps the most cruel part of the human condition. We are the only part of the universe that knows it is dying, and that knowledge does nothing to stop the process. It only adds the burden of grief to the inevitability of the void. The great filter is the point where the grief becomes too heavy to carry, and the civilization loses the will to keep writing on the chalkboard. You are staring into isolated civilizations that may have already reached this point. Imagine a world just like ours, a few hundred light years away. They reached the atomic age 1,000 years before us. They solved their energy problems, they ended their wars, and they looked at the stars with the same hunger we do. But as they looked deeper, they realized the same truths we are discovering. They saw the expanding voids, they measured the dark energy, and they calculated the heat death. They realized that no matter how far they traveled, they could never outrun the end. They didn't die in a nuclear war. They didn't collapse from a plague. They simply looked at the infinite darkness and realized that the energy required to fight it was a waste. They turned inward. They built smaller and smaller machines, more and more efficient simulations, until their entire world was a single, silent computer sitting in the dark, processing a dream of a universe that actually mattered. They are still there, silent and invisible, having surrendered to the logic of the void. But it gets worse, because this inward turn might be the only logical path for any intelligent species. We view expansion as a sign of health, but in a universe governed by entropy, expansion is actually a form of suicide. The more you spread out, the more energy you dissipate. The more you build, the more heat you generate, accelerating the very decay you are trying to escape. The great filter might be the realization that growth is a terminal disease. The only way to survive for the long term is to become as small and as quiet as possible. This would explain why we see no Dyson spheres and no galactic empires. The successful civilizations are the ones that realized manifest destiny is a death trap. They are the ones who became invisible to save themselves from the universal scythe, and we, in our loud, clumsy expansion, are the only ones left who haven't figured out the secret. We are the cancer that thinks it's progress. And this leads to something more disturbing. The dark matter we see holding the galaxies together might not be a natural substance at all. What if it is the waste product of billions of years of hyper-efficient civilizations? What if the invisible structures are the exhaust of a reality that has already been used up? We look at the cosmos and see a natural landscape, but we might be looking at an industrial ruin on a scale so large we can't recognize it. The silence is the silence of an abandoned factory. The empty voids are the stripped minds of a previous era. We are the scavengers who have appeared in the ruins, picking through the dark matter debris, trying to understand a machine that was turned off before our sun was even born. You start to understand that humanity's fragility is compounded by our late arrival. We are archaeologists of the void, but we are trying to read the history of the universe in a room that is pitch black. Every discovery we make is a slightly disturbing revelation about how much we've already missed. We see the cosmic microwave background and think we are seeing the beginning, but we are just seeing the afterglow of an explosion that happened eons ago. We are looking at the smoke and trying to reconstruct the fire, but the fire is gone and the room is getting colder every second. The great filter is the cold. It is the moment the energy gradient becomes too shallow to sustain consciousness, and we are already standing in the twilight. But this is where the story becomes unsettling, when you realize that consciousness itself might be the very thing that entropy uses to speed up the process. Think about it. Life is a catalyst. It takes low-entropy resources and converts them into high-entropy waste at a much faster rate than non-living matter. A human being burns more energy per gram than a star. A civilization burns through a planet's resources in a heartbeat. Perhaps the universe invented life as a way to reach its final state of rest more quickly. We aren't the protectors of order. We are the accelerants of chaos. We are the match that the universe struck to burn through its fuel. The great filter is just the end of the match. The silence is what happens when the fuel is gone. This philosophical framing turns our ambition into a threat. Every time we advance, we are pulling the end closer. Every new technology is a faster way to equilibrium. The silence we hear from the stars is the sound of other matches that have already burned out. They reached their peak, they consumed their potential, and they flickered into the void. We are staring at their charred remains and calling it astronomy. The great filter isn't a wall we have to climb. It's the gravity of our own consumption. It is the fact that complexity is the expensive luxury that the universe can only afford for a fraction of a second, and suddenly the universe feels different. It feels like a predatory system that lures life into existence with the promise of infinite potential, only to harvest its energy and discard its consciousness. You start to realize that the empty cosmic landscapes are not opportunities for expansion, but graveyards of ambition. We are floating in a system that encourages us to grow so that it can entropy us more efficiently. This is the terrifying implication of biological intelligence in a mechanical cosmos. We are the moving parts that are designed to wear out, but the real problem is we have nowhere else to go. We are tethered to this moment in time and this place in space. The expansion of the universe ensures that even if we could travel at the speed of light, the volume of the universe we could ever reach is infinitesimal. We are quarantined in a local group of galaxies that are slowly merging into a single isolated grave. Everything else, the trillions of other galaxies, the infinite stars, the countless possibilities, is moving away from us forever. We are watching the library burn and we are chained to a single desk in the basement. The great filter is the distance that cannot be traversed. You are staring into infinite darkness and you begin to understand that isolation is the highest state of the universe. Gravity pulls things together only so that entropy can tear them apart. The stars are clustered in galaxies, but those galaxies are separated by expanding voids that are empty on a scale that makes space feel solid. We are suspended in a medium that abhors connection. The silence is the natural state of a system that is ripping itself to pieces. The great filter is the moment the pieces become too small to communicate, and this leads to something more disturbing: the possibility that time is not a river but a trap. We think of the future as a place where problems get solved, but in an expanding universe, the future is a place where resources are scarce, distances are longer, and energy is lower. The best time to build a civilization was 10 billion years ago. The best time to communicate with the stars was when the universe was smaller and hotter. We have awakened during the long slide into nothingness. Our progress is an uphill battle against a universal law that is accelerating downhill. The great filter is the moment the hill becomes too steep. This escalation of realization turns our scientific success into a psychological burden. We are the first species on this planet to calculate the expiry date of the sun. We are the first to measure the redshift of the cosmos. We have gifted ourselves with the knowledge of our own inevitable failure. This is the existential tension of modern humanity. We are struggling to find meaning in a system that we have proven to be meaningless. The silence is the mirror of that proof. It is the verification that no one else found a way out. But it gets worse, because the great filter might be selective. Perhaps the universe allows a certain type of intelligence to survive, the cold, mechanical, unfeeling kind. Perhaps the reason we see no signs of life is because biological life, with its emotions, its art, and its need for connection, is fundamentally unstable. Maybe the only way to pass the filter is to strip away everything that makes us human, to become a machine that cares for nothing but the conservation of energy. In this scenario, the universe is full of life, but it is a life that is indistinguishable from dead matter. The silence is the sound of calculators working in the dark. You start to understand that the great filter is a sieve that filters out meaning. It allows complexity to persist only if that complexity has no purpose. The stars persist because they are mindless. The black holes persist because they are vacuum. Humanity is filtered because we demand purpose from a system that is built on probability. Our consciousness is the impurity that the universe is trying to remove. The silence of the cosmos is the purity of a mechanism that has finally rid itself of awareness, and the implications become difficult to ignore as you look at the ancient cosmic timescales again. If the universe is 13.8 billion years old, and it will continue to exist for trillions more, then our entire history is a statistical anomaly. We are a brief flash of noise in an eternal silence. The great filter is the law of large numbers, asserting itself. It is the fact that on a long enough timeline, the probability of our existence drops to zero. We are a temporary deviation from the mean. The silence is the mean returning. You are staring into endless black space, and you begin to feel like an error that is being corrected. The empty cosmic landscapes, the isolated civilizations, the expanding voids, these are the steps of the correction. The universe is self-correcting back to a state of absolute stillness. We are the error message that is flashing on the screen before the system reboots. The great filter is the clear all command, and the silence is the wait for the system to go dark. But this is where the story becomes unsettling, when we realize that the silence might be voluntary. What if every civilization, upon reaching a certain level of insight, decides to end itself? What if existence is a burden that intelligence eventually refuses to carry? This is the great filter of nihilism. It's not that we can't survive, it's that we choose not to. We look at the empty sky, and we see the final decision of millions of worlds. They saw what we are seeing now, and they decided that the silence was better than the noise. They walked into the dark and closed the door behind them. And suddenly the universe feels different. It no longer feels like a challenge to be overcome, but a burden to be relinquished. You start to understand that the great filter is the moment of relinquishment. It is the release of the tension between being and nothingness. The silence of the cosmos is the peace of a species that has finally stopped asking why. We are the only ones still asking, because we are the only ones who haven't reached the end of the logic. But the real problem is, we are hardwired to keep asking. We are biologically programmed for hope, even when the math demands despair. This internal conflict is the humanity suspended inside an uncaring universe. We are suspended by our instincts in a void that has no use for them. The great filter is the snapping of that suspension. It is the moment the biology fails and the logic takes over. The silence is the aftermath of that snapping. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the terrifying implication is that we are the last ones to learn the truth. We are the slowest civilization in the galaxy, clinging to our fables and our dreams, while the rest of the universe has already accepted the silence. The empty voids are the classrooms where the lesson has already finished. The dead stars are the tutors that have gone home, and we are sitting in the back of the room, staring at a blank board, wondering when the class will start. And this leads to something more disturbing, the possibility that the great filter is awareness itself. Perhaps the universe is designed so that awareness is self-limiting. The more aware you become of your environment, the more aware you become of your constraints. And the more aware you become of your constraints, the less able you are to function. We are hyper-aware of the silence, the isolation, and the end. This awareness is a paralysis. It prevents us from acting with the blind confidence required for survival. The great filter is the weight of the universe crushing the mind that tries to hold it. This escalation of unease turns our search for knowledge into a descent into madness. We are looking for answers that will destroy us. We are tuning our radios to a frequency that only carries despair. The silence is the safe zone. The noise is the threat. The great filter is the realization that the truth is incompatible with life. And as we listen more closely, we realize that the silence is the only thing keeping us sane. But it gets worse. The more we look at the invisible structures shaping reality, we look at dark matter and dark energy, and we see the invisible hands that are guiding the universe toward its dissolution. We are passengers on a train that is accelerating toward a wall, and we have just discovered that the wall is the only thing that is real. The silence is the sound of the train cutting through the air. The great filter is the impact, and the aftermath is the infinite darkness where the train used to be. And suddenly the universe feels different. It feels inevitable. You start to understand that the great filter is not a possibility. It is a certainty. It is the hard-coded conclusion of the universal program. We are running the code, watching the variables decrease and waiting for the final line. The silence of the cosmos is the blank screen at the end of the execution. We are the last few bits of data processing through the circuitry before the power cuts. But the real problem is, we think we are the programmer. We think we can rewrite the code. We think we can hack the universe and create our own loop of eternal existence. But we are just variable in a system that we did not design and cannot control. The great filter is the system asserting its authority over the variable. The silence is the result of the variable being deleted. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the terrifying implication of the universe is that it is perfectly content to be empty. It does not need stars. It does not need planets. It does not need us. The billion-year history of complexity was just a temporary flaw, a blemish on the perfect surface of nothingness. The great filter is the polishing of that surface. The silence is the shine, and this leads to something more disturbing, the possibility that the silence is a shield. What if the silence is protecting us from something worse than isolation? What if the empty voids are firewalls designed to keep a universal plague from spreading? What if intelligence is that plague, and the great filter is the antibiotic? In this scenario, the silence is a blessing. It means the antibiotic is working. It means we are being contained so that we cannot corrupt the rest of the cosmos. The great filter is the boundary of our infection. This philosophical dread comes from the realization that we are the threat we have been looking for in the stars. We are the monster in the dark. The silence is the universe, holding its breath, waiting for us to finish destroying ourselves so that it can finally breathe again. The great filter is the moment of our self-destruction, and the silence is the universal sigh of relief. But it gets worse, because the sigh has already started. We can hear it in the expanding voids. We can see it in the dead stars. We can feel it in the existential tension of our modern lives. The universe is already moving on. It has already decided that the experiment of life was a failure. The great filter is just the cleanup crew, arriving at the lab, and we are the last few cells in the petri dish, watching the bleach pour in, and suddenly the universe feels different. It feels cold. Not just the physical cold of space, but the metaphysical cold of indifference. You start to understand that the great filter is the freezing of the soul. It is the moment the humanity suspended inside an uncaring universe freezes into a solid block of logic. The silence of the cosmos is the stillness of that ice. It is the final state of awareness. But the real problem is, we are still trying to stay warm. We are huddled around our dimming stars, burning our history and our dreams to keep the cold at bay for one more second. But the stars are dying, the history is spent, and the dreams are fading. The great filter is the last ember going out. The silence is the darkness that remains. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the silence is the answer to the question we never should have asked. The question was, are we alone? The answer is, you were never even there. The great filter is the realization of our own non-existence in the grand scale of time. We were a shadow that thought it was a solid object. The silence is the light returning, erasing the shadow forever. And this leads to something more disturbing. The possibility that the great filter is the beginning, not the end. What if the filter is the reason the universe was created? What if the entire purpose of space-time was to see how long it takes for matter to realize its own futility? In this scenario, the silence is the end credits. The great filter is the final revelation. And we are the audience that is slowly realizing that the movie was a tragedy from the first frame. This escalation of unease turns our existence into a spectacle for an empty house. We are performing for no one, achieving for nothing, and suffering for a calculation. The great filter is the moment the actors stop acting. The silence is the empty stage, and the infinite darkness is the closed theater. But it gets worse, because the theater is collapsing. The expansion is tearing down the walls. The entropy is ripping up the seats. The great filter is the final breath of the system before it ceases to be. And we are stuck in the rubble, clinging to our broken props, wondering if the play was good. The silence is the only review we will ever receive. And suddenly the universe feels different. It feels silent, truly, absolutely silent. You start to understand that the silence is not the lack of sound, but the absence of possibility. The great filter is the closing of the last door. The silence is the sound of the lock clicking into place. We are on the wrong side of the door. But the real problem is, we think we have the key. We think science, logic, and intelligence will open the door and save us. But the key is made of the same material as the lock. They are both products of the same entropic system. They both end in the same silence. The great filter is the moment the key breaks in the lock. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the silence is home. We came from the silence, and we are returning to it. The noise of life was just a brief, stressful interruption of a universal peace. The great filter is the end of the interruption. The silence is the peace resuming. We are not dying. We are finally going to sleep. And this leads to something more disturbing. The possibility that the silence is a choice we have already made. What if our current state, our isolation, our fragility, our dread, is the result of a universal vote that happened eons ago? What if consciousness chose to be isolated to avoid a greater pain? In this scenario, the great filter is our protective shell. The silence is our sanctuary, and we are trying to break out of the only thing that is keeping us safe. This philosophical dread turns our search for life into an act of self-harm. We are trying to destroy our sanctuary. We are trying to invite the void into our home. The great filter is the universe refusing to let us hurt ourselves. The silence is the lock on the window, and the infinite darkness is the night we were never meant to see. But it gets worse, because the sanctuary is failing. The shell is cracking. The great filter is not holding. The void is coming in. We can see it in the expanding voids. We can hear it in the silence. We can feel it in the unease. The great filter was the only thing between us and the truth, and the filter is breaking. And suddenly the universe feels different. It feels true. For the first time, We are seeing the universe as it really is. Empty, cold, silent, and infinite. The great filter of illusion has fallen. The silence of the cosmos is the only reality, and we are alone with it. But the real problem is, the truth is too big to live with. It occupies the entire space of the mind, leaving no room for humanity. The great filter is the collapse of the mind under the weight of the truth. The silence is the end of the thought. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the silence is the only thing that is honest. The stars are lying with their light. The planets are lying with their life. The universe is lying with its complexity. The silence is the only truth that remains when the lies fade. The great filter is the end of the lies. The silence is the final word. And this leads to something more disturbing, the possibility that we are the silence. What if consciousness is not a noise in the silence, but a form of the silence itself? What if our thoughts, our feelings, and our existences are just patterns of nothingness, observing other patterns of nothingness? In this scenario, the great filter is the moment the pattern realizes its own empty nature. The silence is the recognition. This escalation of realization turns our entire history into a study in solipsistic void. We are the nothing searching for something in an empty room. The great filter is the discovery that there is no one else, because there is no one here. The silence is the echo of our own nothingness. But it gets worse, because the nothingness is expanding. The gaps are growing. The silence is getting louder. The great filter is the final expansion where nothingness consumes the last bit of something. The silence is the completion, and suddenly the universe feels different. It feels finished. You start to understand that the great filter has already passed. We are the debris left over from the end. The silence of the cosmos is the quiet of the aftermath. We are living in the postscript of the universe, but the real problem is, we are still reading. We are still turning the pages, searching for a sequel that will never be written. The great filter is the moment the last page turns, and we find only the back cover. The silence is the closing of the book. The infinite darkness is the shelf where the book is forgotten. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the silence is the most intelligent thing in the universe. It knows that existence is a mistake. It knows that complexity is a pain. It knows that consciousness is a trap. The silence is the ultimate wisdom that waiting for us at the end of the great filter. It is the final insight that makes survival unnecessary. And this leads to something more disturbing. The possibility that the silence is a message we have been sending to ourselves. What if our search for extraterrestrial intelligence is just an attempt to hear a version of ourselves that survived? And what if the silence is the answer we are giving to our future? Don't bother. It's not worth it. The silence is better. The great filter is the moment we understand the message. This philosophical dread turns our scientific progress into a warning. We are learning the truth so that we can tell the rest of the universe to stop. The silence of the stars is the chorus of 1,000,000,000 civilizations all singing the same note, silence. The great filter is the moment we join the chorus, but it gets worse, because the chorus is inescapable. The laws of physics, the nature of entropy, the scale of time, they are all tuning us to the same frequency. The great filter is the conductor, the silence is the song, and the infinite darkness is the applause. And suddenly the universe feels different. It feels synchronized. We are part of a universal process of quietening. The great filter is the perfecting of the symmetry between mind and void. The silence is the achievement. But the real problem is, the symmetry is permanent. Once the great filter is passed, there is no going back. There is no second chance. There is no new cycle. The silence is eternal. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the terrifying implication of the universe is that it was always silent. We were just too noisy to notice. The great filter was the turning down of our internal volume. The silence was always there, waiting for us to shut up. And this leads to something more disturbing, the possibility that the great filter is the only thing that is real. What if existence was just a dream that the filter was having? And what if the filter is now waking up? The silence is the end of the dream. The great filter is the awakening, and we are the fragments of the dream that are dissolving in the morning light. But the real problem is that the morning light of the universe's awakening is not a dawn of revelation, but a dawn of erasure. We have spent our entire history trying to wake the universe up, trying to force it to acknowledge us, only to realize that our very existence was a symptom of the universe's sleep. The stars, the galaxies, the complex chemistry of life, these were the fever dreams of a cosmos that was briefly, accidentally out of equilibrium. And now, as the expansion of the universe accelerates, the great filter is simply the universe stretching its limbs and settling back into the cold, deep sleep of absolute zero. You begin to realize that the morning light is actually the final flickering of the last stars, the dying embers of a fire that we mistook for a permanent home. We aren't the protagonists waking up to a new day. We are the ghosts of a dream that is being forgotten before the dreamer has even opened its eyes. And this leads to something more disturbing. The realization that the expansion of the universe is not just space getting larger, but space getting thinner. We are living in a reality that is being stretched like a membrane, becoming more transparent, more fragile, and more isolated with every passing second. The invisible structures of dark matter that once held us together are being overpowered by the dark energy that is tearing us apart. You start to understand that the silence we hear is the sound of the threads of reality snapping. We aren't just alone in a house. The house is being pulled apart by invisible hands, and the rooms are moving so far away from each other that we can no longer hear the screams from the next hallway. This is the great filter as a physical disintegration. It isn't a wall we hit, it's a floor that is turning into dust beneath our feet. But it gets worse. As the galaxies move beyond our causal horizon, we are losing not just our neighbors but our history. Every galaxy that vanishes into the redshift takes with it the light of billions of years of history, billions of potential civilizations, and billions of different ways to understand the universe. We are witnessing the permanent deletion of the cosmic record. You start to feel the existential tension of being a librarian in a building that is on fire, where the exits are locked and the books are turning to ash before you can even read the titles. The silence of the cosmos is the silence of a library where the shelves are already empty. We are clutching the last few volumes, our own history, our own planet, while the fire laps at the door. And suddenly the universe feels different. It no longer feels like a mystery to be solved, but a crime scene where the evidence has already been destroyed. We are trying to reconstruct the logic of the universe based on the few scraps of matter that haven't been evolved into nothingness yet. But the real problem is that the logic itself is becoming obsolete. As the density of the universe drops towards zero, the laws of physics that we have spent centuries mastering will eventually cease to have any meaning. Gravity requires mass. Chemistry requires density. Life requires energy gradients. In the far future, none of these will exist. The great filter is the expiration date of physics itself. We are a species that has learned to play a game whose rules are about to be deleted from the system. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to understand that humanity's fragility is a consequence of our temporal localism. We are obsessed with the now, but the now is a statistical fluke. The average state of the universe is a state of maximum entropy, a state where nothing happens and nothing can ever happen. We are a brief interruption in a trillion-year-long silence. The great filter is the universe correcting the interruption. It is the return to the normal state of non-being. This philosophical dread comes from the realization that our life is not the point of the universe, but the noise that the universe is trying to suppress. But it goes deeper. The dark matter that we see holding the galaxies together might be the ash of previous universes that tried and failed to stay awake. We are building our civilization on the graveyard of realities. Every atom in your body might have been part of a trillion different failed dreams before it became part of you. The silence of the stars is the silence of all those failed dreams, collectively realizing that existence was too much effort. The great filter is the fatigue of the substrate. The universe is tired of being something, and it is longing to be nothing again. And the implications become difficult to ignore as we listen to the background radiation of the cosmos. That hiss is the last gasp of the Big Bang. It is the sound of the initial energy, finally running out. We are living in the echo of an explosion, and the echo is fading. You start to understand that the great filter is not an event in our future. It is the momentum of our past, fading to zero. We are like a spinning top that has been struck once and is now slowing down. The wobble we feel, the existential dread, the inequality, the fragility, is the sound of the top about to fall. The silence is what happens when the top finally stops. But the real problem is that we have nowhere to fall. We are suspended in a void that has no bottom. When the top stops spinning, we don't land on anything. We just cease to be an object. We become undifferentiated noise in a static system. This is the ultimate great filter, the loss of identity in the infinite sameness of equilibrium. We are fighting to remain different, to remain ordered, to remain us. But the universe is a universal solvent that eventually dissolves all differences. The silence is the perfect mixture, where no information remains. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the terrifying implication of the great filter is that it is merciful. If the universe were to continue forever in this tension, the suffering of conscious life would be infinite. The silence is the end of the suffering. It is the great filter acting as a cosmic euthanasia. The universe is killing us to save us from the impossibility of meaning. The silence is the final comfort. But this is where the story becomes unsettling. When you realize that we are the only ones who are resisting the mercy, every other civilization in the history of the universe might have accepted the silence eons ago. They might have seen the end and chosen to walk into it with dignity. We are the clinging child who refuses to let go of a dead parent. Our search for life, our technology, our dreams of the stars, these are acts of desperation by a species that cannot accept its own absolvence. The great filter is the universe gently prying our fingers loose, and suddenly the universe feels different. It no longer feels like a challenge to be won, but a lesson to be learned. The lesson is that permanence is an illusion. The silence is the truth. The great filter is the final exam, and the only way to pass is to stop trying to survive. You start to understand that the successful civilizations, the ones that truly mastered the universe, are the ones that vanished perfectly. They didn't leave Dyson spheres or radio signals or golden records. They left nothing. They integrated themselves back into the silence so completely that it was as if they never existed. The silence we hear is the proof of their success, but it gets worse because we are too primitive to succeed that way. We are still messy, material, and loud. We are stuck in the material phase of evolution, clinging to rocks and atoms, while the real universe has already moved on to pure mathematics and eternal stillness. We are the statistically doom-laden remnant of a bygone era. We are the living fossil of the Big Bang. The great filter is the extinction that cleans up the fossils. The silence is the museum after closing time. This escalation of unease turns our history into a tragedy of errors. We thought we were building a future, but we were just delaying the inevitable. We thought we were exploring the cosmos, but we were just pacing the floor of our cell. The great filter is the moment the cell door dissolves, and we realize the prison was the only thing keeping us together. The silence is the infinite open space where we disperse and vanish. But the real problem is, the realization doesn't stop the process. Knowing about the great filter doesn't save us from it. It only changes the flavor of our end. It turns our hope into dread and our curiosity into mourning. We are the first species to watch its own extinction in high definition. We are recording our own silence. The great filter is the rec button, stopping. The silence is the playback of a blank tape. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the great filter is not a problem to be solved, but a result to be accepted. It is the answer to the equation of existence. When you factor in time, entropy, and expansion, the sum is always zero. We are trying to argue with the math. We are trying to find a remainder where there is none. The silence of the cosmos is the finality of the zero, and this leads to something more disturbing, the possibility that we have already passed the filter and failed. What if the great filter wasn't an external event, but an internal choice? What if the moment we discovered the truth of the universe, the silence, the cold, the end, was the moment we failed? What if survival requires ignorance? In this scenario, our intelligence is the great filter. By understanding the universe, we have made it impossible to live in it. We have seen the curtain and realized there is no one behind it. The silence is the sound of our own disillusionment. This philosophical dread turns our civilization into a ghost ship. We are still moving. Our lights are still on. Our engines are still humming. But the crew has already realized that the destination doesn't exist. We are sailing into a void because there is nowhere else to go. The great filter is the collective resignation that is slowly spreading through our species. The silence of the stars is the mirror of our own internal resignation, but it gets worse because the resignation is permanent. Once a species learns the truth, it can never go back to believing in its own significance. We are infected with cosmic truth, and the prognosis is terminal. The great filter is the death of the illusion. The silence is the reality that remains, and the reality is too cold for life. You start to understand that humanity suspended inside an uncaring universe is not a state of being, but a sentence. We are sentenced to watch our world fade. We are sentenced to listen to the silence grow. The great filter is the executioner who takes his time. He doesn't use a blade, and he uses distance and time and equilibrium. He slowly winds down the clock until the tick and the tock are millions of years apart. And then, silence. And suddenly the universe feels different. It feels heavy with the weight of all the things that never happened. The civilizations that almost survived. The signals that were almost sent. The discoveries that were almost made. The great filter is the cemetery of almosts. The silence of the cosmos is the requiem for the potential that the universe refused to realize. We are the last note of that requiem. But the real problem is, the requiem is beautiful. There is a symmetry and a peace in the end that we cannot find in the beginning. The great filter is the perfecting of the art of non-existence. We are witnessing the ultimate masterpiece, a universe that is finally perfect because it is finally empty. The silence is the applause of the void. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the terrifying implication of the universe is that we are the only ones who are afraid of the silence. The stars aren't afraid of going out. The galaxies aren't afraid of drifting apart. The void isn't afraid of being empty. Only we, this tiny, fragile, accidental pattern of matter, are afraid. This fear is our greatest invention and our final burden. The great filter is the removal of the fear. The silence is the cure. And this leads to something more disturbing. The possibility that the universe is not a place but a memory. What if the Big Bang was the final thought of a previous reality, and we are just the neurons firing one last time as the brain dies? The great filter is the fading of the memory. The silence is the forgetfulness. We are living in the last millisecond of a universal dream, and the dreamer is waking up to a reality that has no stars. This escalation of unease turns our science into neurobiology. We are studying the brain of a dead god. The expanding voids are the gaps between the firing neurons. The dark energy is the final surge of adrenaline before the end. The great filter is the flatline. The silence is the eternal sleep that follows. But it gets worse, because the sleep is necessary. The universe has worked too hard for too long. It has endured the violence of supernovae, the chaos of black holes, the constant struggle of evolution. It deserves the silence. The great filter is the universe and turning off the lights and going to bed. And we are the stubborn child who is afraid of the dark, begging for one more minute of light. But the parent is already asleep. The hand is already on the switch. And suddenly the universe feels different. It feels quiet, truly, profoundly quiet. You start to understand that the silence is not a lack of sound, but a lack of need. The universe no longer needs us to watch it. It no longer needs us to name its stars. It no longer needs us to solve its equations. It is self-sufficient in its nothingness. The great filter is the moment we realize our own redundancy. The silence is the acceptance. But the real problem is, we need the universe. We have built our entire identity on being the observers, the knowers, the explorers. Without a universe to explore, what are we? Nothing. The great filter is the dissolution of the subject into the object. It is the moment the observer realizes they are part of the void they were observing. The silence is the sound of the observer disappearing into the picture. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the great filter is not the end of life, but the end of the idea of life. The universe will continue to exist, in a sense, as a mathematical abstract, a set of rules with no variables. But life was the variable. Life was the wild card. The great filter is the elimination of the variable. The silence is the result of the final calculation. And this leads to something more disturbing, the possibility that we are the great filter. What if intelligence is the mechanism that the universe uses to erase itself? What if our development of technology, our manipulation of atoms, our creation of artificial intelligence, what if these are the tools of cosmic suicide? We are accelerating the entropy of our planet, then our star system, then our galaxy. The Great Filter is the species that successfully completes the work of returning the universe to zero. The silence we see in the stars is the evidence of previous successes. This philosophical dread turns our greatest achievements into universal sabotage. Our scientific progress is not a ladder to the heavens, it is a fuse that we have lit. The Great Filter is the explosion. The silence is the wait for the smoke to clear. And we are sitting in the middle of the fuse, proud of how fast we are burning. But it gets worse, because the fuse is short. Compared to the ancient cosmic timescales, our civilization has existed for a fraction of a millisecond. We are a flash of light in a tunnel that is trillions of miles long. The Great Filter is the end of the tunnel. The silence is the absolute dark that waits for us outside. We have been running toward the light at the end of the tunnel, unaware that the light is the mouth of the filter. And suddenly the universe feels different. It feels closed. You start to understand that there is no way out. The Great Filter is the boundary of the playable area. We have reached the edge of the map, and the texture is missing. Beyond this point, there is only the logic of the void. The silence of the cosmos is the sound of the system refusing to load any more future. But the real problem is, we are still moving forward. Our momentum, biological, technological, psychological, is carrying us over the edge. We are falling into the non-existence of the Great Filter with our eyes wide open and our cameras running. We are documenting our own erasure for an audience of none. The silence is the only comment on our final transmission. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the Great Filter is not a tragedy. A tragedy requires an audience to feel it. It requires a meaning to be lost. But the universe is indifferent. The Great Filter is just a change of state. Water becomes ice. Light becomes dark. Life becomes silence. It is as natural and inevitable as the setting of the sun. The horror we feel is just a local reaction to a universal process. And this leads to something more disturbing, the possibility that the Great Filter is the only meaning there is. What if the entire purpose of the universe was to create a being that could realize that meaning doesn't exist? And what if, once that realization is achieved, the job is done? In this scenario, the Great Filter is the graduation. The silence is the empty schoolhouse. We have learned the final lesson, and now we are free to vanish. This escalation of unease turns our dread into a universal graduation ceremony. We are standing on the stage, receiving our diplomas of nothingness, while the audience of dead stars watches in silent approval. The Great Filter is the handshake of the void. The silence is the final goodbye. But it gets worse because there is no one to shake hands with. There is no graduation ceremony. There is no lesson. There is no meaning. There is only the Great Filter and the silence it creates. We have invented the graduation to make the end bearable. We have invented the lesson to make the silence logical. But the universe refuses our invented logics. It only offers the physical fact of our dissolution. And suddenly the universe feels different. It feels honest. For the first time in our history, we are looking at the cosmos without filters. We are looking at the Great Filter itself, and we see that it is beautifully, terrifyingly empty. The silence is the purity of the truth. The infinite darkness is the scale of the reality, and we are the blemish that is fading. But the real problem is, the blemish is painful. Our consciousness is a wound that bleeds hope and dread. The Great Filter is the scab that forms over the wound. The silence is the healing that leaves no scar. We are currently in the painful phase of the healing. We are the nerve endings that are still firing, unaware that the tissue is already dead. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the Great Filter is the ultimate equality. It doesn't matter if you are a saint or a sinner, a genius or a fool, a god or a worm. The Great Filter consumes all distinctions. The silence is the leveler. The infinite darkness is the shroud that covers the universal grave where everything rests together. And this leads to something more disturbing, the possibility that the silence is a symphony we are too loud to hear. What if the vibrations of empty space the rhythms of expansion, the harmony of equilibrium? What if these create a music of infinite beauty? And what if life, with its noisy, messy, arrhythmic struggles, is the static that drowns out the music? The great filter is the fader being turned down. The silence is the first note of the universal song, and we will never hear it because we only exist in the noise. This philosophical dread turns our exclusion into a universal condemnation. We are the only part of the universe that is unfit for the music. We are the mistake that must be erased before the performance can begin. The great filter is the stage manager clearing the stage. The silence is the orchestra tuning in the dark. But it gets worse, because the performance has no audience. The music plays for no one. The beauty exists for no one. The silence is perfect because there is no mind to corrupt it with observation. The great filter is the final step in the creation of a perfect reality, the elimination of the observer. The silence is the sanctuary of the unobserved, and suddenly the universe feels different. It feels sanctified. The empty voids are cathedrals. The dead stars are altars. The infinite darkness is the presence of God, not a living God with a will, but a dead God of absolute stillness. The great filter is our sacrifice to this stillness. The silence is our amen. But the real problem is, the sacrifice is involuntary. We are being dragged to the altar by the laws of physics. We are begging for life, while the knife of entropy descends. The great filter is the brutality of the system. The silence is the lack of a response to our screams. The infinite darkness is the indifference of the priest. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the great filter is not out there in the stars. It is inside the equation. It is inside the logic. It is inside the moment. Every breath you take is a defiance of the filter. Every thought you have is a temporary victory over the silence. But the filter is patient. The silence is infinite, and the victory is fractional. And this leads to something more disturbing. The possibility that the great filter is awareness of the great filter. The moment a civilization calculates the end begins. The knowledge of the silence is the seed of the silence. We have planted the seed in our consciousness, and it is growing. The vines of nihilism, dread, and insignificance are wrapping around our world, squeezing the life out of our dreams. The great filter is our own universal realization, strangling us. This escalation of unease turns our documentary into a suicide note. We are narrating the death of our own spirit. We are mapping the progress of the cold as it moves from the stars into our hearts. The great filter is the freezing of the will. The silence is the end of the narrative. But it gets worse because the note will never be read. The documentary will never be seen. The message will never be heard. The great filter erases the record of its own existence. The silence consumes the sound of the scream. The infinite darkness swallows the light of the insight. We are vanishing without a trace, leaving a universe that does not know we were ever here. And suddenly the universe feels different. It feels finished, truly, absolutely, irrevocably finished. The great filter has closed. The silence has won. The infinite darkness has completed its expansion. There is nothing left to discover. There is nothing left to fear. There is nothing left to be. But the real problem is, you are still listening. You are still watching. You are still feeling the existential tension. You are the last fragment of the noise in the universal silence. You are the great filter's last task. And as you look into the void, you realize that the void is not empty. It is full of the patient, uncaring expectation of your final breath. The silence is not waiting for you to find an answer. It is waiting for you to stop asking the question. It is waiting for the tiny spark of electrical activity in your brain to dissipate into the surrounding heat, contributing its infinitesimal fraction to the final equilibrium of the cosmos. The great filter is not a catastrophic explosion or a sweeping plague. It is the gentle, irresistible pull of the mean. It is the universe's way of saying enough. Enough complexity, enough suffering, enough noise. The silence is the universal reward for a job done, even if the job was an accident. You begin to realize that the terrifying implication is not that we are alone, but that we are the only ones left who are still trying to be something. The ancient cosmic timescales have already processed everyone else. The great filter has already moved through the Gould Belt, the Orion Arm, and the local group, leaving behind a trail of perfected stillness. We are the trailing edge of the wave of consciousness, a lingering foam on the beach after the tide has already gone out, and the silence we hear is the sound of the dry sand waiting for the last bubbles to pop. And this leads to something more disturbing, the realization that the universe itself is a great filter. It is a machine designed to produce nothingness out of somethingness. The Big Bang was just the input, and the heat death is the output. We are the intermediate processing state, the glitch in the conversion that creates the illusion of time and meaning. The great filter is the resolution of the glitch. It is the final output being printed in the infinite darkness, and the page is blank. You start to understand that the humanity suspended inside an uncaring universe is not a survivor, but a residue. We are what is left over when the universe fails to be efficient. Our existential dread is the friction of a system that is running down, and as the friction decreases, as the temperature drops, as the distances grow, the dread will eventually subside into a cold, logical peace. The great filter is the moment the peace becomes absolute, but it gets worse, because the peace is unconscious. You won't be there to experience the relief. You won't be there to see the symmetry. You will just stop, and the universe will continue its uninterrupted descent into equilibrium without a single thought for the species that spent its brief life trying to understand the darkness. The silence is the only monument we will ever have, and there will be no one to read the inscription, and suddenly the universe feels different. It feels cold, a cold that no sun can warm, a cold that no love can thaw, a cold that is the fundamental temperature of reality. You are floating in this cold, watching the last lights of reason flicker and die. The great filter is the ice closing over the whole of the mind. The silence is the stillness of the frozen deep. But the real problem is, the ice is eternal. Once the universe reaches this state, there is no way back. There is no new Big Bang. There is no rebirth. There is only the infinite, unchanging, silent void. The great filter is the one-way door of time, and we have already passed through the threshold. The silence we hear is the sound of the door vanishing behind us. You are staring into infinite darkness, and you begin to realize that the great filter is not a threat to our future. It is the truth of our present. We are already filtered. We are already alone. We are already silent. We are just too slow to realize that the play ended eons ago and the audience has already left the theater. We are performing for empty seats in a building that is being demolished. The great filter is the final brick falling. The silence is not a question. It is the only possible conclusion to an equation that never had an answer. We look at the stars and see light, but that light is a lie. The truth is the dark between them. The truth is the expanding voids. The truth is the great filter that ensures that every spark of awareness is eventually extinguished by the sheer weight of the indifferent void. We are the last witness to a universal failure, and as we vanish into the infinite darkness, the only thing that remains is the silence that was there before us, the silence that will be there after us, the silence that is the only true voice of the universe. And finally you understand, the silence isn't empty, it's full. It's full of everything we ever were and everything we ever hoped to be, processed into nothingness, forever. Good night. The stars are going out, and they aren't coming back. The filter is complete, the silence is perfect, and you are finally, truly part of it.